Hey, this is Samantha Scaffidi, and I play Victoria Hayes in the Terrifier franchise, and you are listening to Don't Go Out There podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There podcast. We really appreciate you listening. I am super excited for this upcoming interview. We are excited to be joined by a rising star in the horror genre. She is an actress, writer, and director, most known for her role as Victoria in the Terrifier franchise, Miss Samantha Scaffidi. Samantha, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. We like to start all of our interviews off just asking, how did you get into the acting business? Was it something you always wanted to do, or was it something that came to you a little later in life?
Oh, it definitely came to me a little later in life. In the sense, like the business came a lot later, but when I was younger, it kind of was always in the background of my mind. I always wanted to go on auditions. I lived in Connecticut, so I was always thinking, oh, it'd be nice to go on audition in the city. I had a few friends that kind of went and did that, but my mother always said, until I could drive myself, then I wouldn't be able to pursue it. So I definitely, yeah, I was an athlete kind of growing up. My family wasn't in the arts, wasn't in the film industry, and so I got a little bit of a taste of acting, in middle school when my English teacher, Miss Doran, recommended me to go to like a theater camp at Stage Door Manor. I did that, but then went back to sports. And then I took a course in college, but was getting my business degree. So I went back to my business degree, and then when I went to the city, I ended up doing an acting course in the William Esper Studio, which is a conservatory, and I did that for summer. And when I got out of that, I think my dad saw how excited and happy I was and how I had changed in relation to doing that course. So he and my mother supported me and said, look, if you want to get into acting, then we're going to support you, but you got to do it the right way. You got to go to school, and they supported me for those 2 years. And that's how I got into the biz.
Absolutely, fantastic. So, okay, so I've seen in previous interviews where you directed a horror short. I mean, your IMDb shows 9 producing credits, directing credits, writing credits, and over 20 acting credits. Do you have a preference, or do you enjoy doing a little bit of everything?
I enjoy them all for different reasons. I I always believed acting was kind of the main draw, and then I think when I started acting, I learned how to produce in order to act. But then I was trying to act and produce, and realized that you really can't do two things well at the same time. Something always tends to give. You give more
Right.
attention to one thing. But yeah, they exercise different parts of me. I mean, writing is pure intuition. It's my own imagination. And I discover myself in the process of writing, but when I'm acting, I get to, go into all these different minds and worlds, and that expands my capacity for empathy and compassion. And then directing, I get to, bring those things to life, but then support other amazing crew and cast and kind of help bring them to their best. So it's just, yeah, it's definitely something that, I get a little bit of something out of everything. Producing, I like producing, and it's nice to bring other people's, visions to life. But I feel like producing is something that there are so many people who do it a lot better than me. I do it well, but I'm not really I'm not really into the finances of it all. I like more of the creative producing, if anything.
Sure. So let's get into the Terrifier franchise now, and your character Vicky. Can you tell our audience, how that role came about for you?
Yeah, so Gino Caffarelli, who was the owner of the pizza parlor in Terrifier, him and I had done a short film together. He directed it right out of school for me. And at that time, after we had shot that project together, I think Damien was looking for actors and actresses, and Gino threw my name into the mix, and then I auditioned, and then I ultimately got the part.
Cool.
So thank you,
So,
Gino.
yeah, your characters had quite the ride throughout the franchise. I think a lot of horror fans forget that you were basically the final girl of the first Terrifier movie. Can you talk about your time on that first Terrifier and fighting Art the Clown, and if you could do it all over again and just pick your sister Tara up? I'm just kidding.
No, yeah, I like to say that Terrifier was like an innocent time. It was so long ago that I'm probably just making things up to fill the story. But it definitely was like I just remember it was cold, you know, but there was maybe like 9 of us really. It was like Damien, George, Phil, David, and I, and then there was Sekou and Roberto, and that was like I think the extent besides the other actors that came in and out on my days of the size. And in terms of the filming, I just remember like David and I trying to pass the time while we were waiting for lighting setups and whatnot and scenes to get going. But it was fun and innocent, and I don't think we had any idea what the hell we were getting into. Obviously, 10 years later, I think David and I were like, it'll be good for the reel. No one will see it, you know. But in terms of picking up my sister as Victoria, I feel like Victoria always had only one choice, and that was to go pick her up and enter into the building. But if it was me, I would have sat in the car and said, "Get your ass out here! I'm not fucking around."
Yeah.
Would have never went into that building. Let's just say that.
So before we get into Terrifier 3, you had a smaller role in the second one. Can you tell our audience about how James Wan's Malignant changed the ending of Terrifier 2 and ultimately changed the future of your character going into Terrifier 3?
Yeah, so the story goes that we shot, I think, 2 days for the original scene that has never made the light of day, which was still with Chris Jericho, where Art the Clown was growing out of the back of my neck or my head. I think it was actually in the back of my head, which then once he comes through, I would be, dead. There's no way of surviving that. But then, so we shot that, and that was a fun, wild scene. And then later on, I get a message from Damien that was like, so we need to reshoot the whole ending with you because, a movie just came out, Malignant, and it's pretty much the same ending, which was absolutely wild because we had shot it before it came out. So, so then they went back to the drawing board, and then they came up with the other version of the birth, a more natural version. Yeah. Than maybe birthing out of the head, but and that's how I survived.
So, you mentioned Chris Jericho. How is it with working with him? I've heard that you're a big wrestling and WWE fan, and so am I. So I gotta ask, how was it working with Chris?
Oh, he's the best. I got a kick out of it. I like to joke that I came to set because my brother James and I grew up watching WWF before it was WWE. Yeah, and it was like the Lita and the Hardy Boys era, you know what I mean? Yeah. Triple H, all that. So we used to like play fight, like get dressed up and like wrestle against each other. So I knew and was definitely a fan of Chris Jericho. And then I remember like when I met him, he was super nice, super polite. Like, hey, so we're gonna do this. Are you comfortable with that? Like, very like not hands on because that sounds weird, but he was very present. very, very present, very, very kind, and always checking in to make sure I was comfortable. But I remember he like put me in a headlock, and I just like got so excited. I was like, "This is fucking awesome!" I remember finally saying to my brother, "I just got put in a headlock by Chris Jericho in a scene." But yeah, it's funny though. Chris and I officially met, and by officially I mean like with my actual face. I think in Austin at the Fantastic Film Festival, and. He was laughing because he's like, I'm going to probably be staring at you, but I've never actually like met you without the prosthetic on. And so he like was familiar with my voice, but didn't actually know what I looked like underneath it all. So we had a lot of fun over that because the only time I had met him was in scenarios where I was covered in blood, horrible face prosthetic, and like, attacking him in some manner.
Well, he's still very much involved with AEW. Maybe we'll see you on AEW television sometime.
That would be hilarious. You would know I was the worst actor if I was ever put on that. I would love to see how that would turn out. I probably fall over and not be able to get back up again. But
all right, well, let's get into Terrifier 3 a little bit. Not to have any spoilers, but Vicky has a much larger role as an antagonist in this one. Art's tag team partner, basically, in pursuit of Sienna and Jonathan. So, what were some of your favorite scenes to shoot? Like, do you have any funny or fun stories behind the scenes you'd like to share? Or?
I really wish that I had like great stories. I was just like, filming was amazing. I love everyone, and coming to set, knowing everyone and seeing their faces was always a joy. But the moment that I got put in that the makeup chair. We were doing prosthetics. It was pretty extensive. So I kind of lived in the makeup chair when I wasn't filming. And that was tough because a lot of the scenes I was in were extremely physical and technical. So, so I would, but the funny thing is that we would have a really grueling week on set where we were doing like the scene with Chris Jericho where it was cold, I was covered in blood, and and we're trying to do all these technical gags, and then I would go away and recover, and then they would have an amazing day on set where like they were doing the bar scene with Daniel Roback and Clint Howard, and I would come back to set being ready, and they'd be like, "Oh, we just had the greatest week. They're so fucking funny." And I was like, "What the? Why can't I have that experience?" But yeah. Other than that, I would say the most memorable was David getting sick on set, which I was there for, which is just funny. It was it was during the final sequence. I won't give away too much, but it had to do with bodily fluids.
Right.
Yeah. Which I was like, come on, that's the thing that you get sick of.
Right. Of all the things.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite kill that you were part of during the shooting, or?
Spoiler alert. We'll throw a spoiler warning up now.
Yeah. I don't really like killing anyone because I really like the actors that I'm with. So I have to say, if I was in a scene and I was to pick my favorite scene, the irony is the glass scene. For some reason, like I just, in a sick way, I didn't know I would like that, but watching it, I'm like, I feel like it's the epitome of my character. Like that just represents like, she's just a pure sadist getting pleasure out of the suffering of another individual. I love that it was a John Abrams kill. That's a horrific kill. I think he's an amazing person, amazing actor. I had a lot of fun working with him during that time. But that might be my favorite scene that I'm in some sick way.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we had John Abrams on our show a while back. He's super nice.
Yeah,
Samantha,
he's wonderful. Super talented.
Yeah, I love that guy. Can you tell us the differences on set between all three films? I mean, the first movie had a budget of less than $50,000. Terrifier 2 had a $250,000 budget, which was all crowdsourced from the fans. I think that's incredible. The Terrifier fans did an incredible job with that. And $2 million for Terrifier 3. Can you speak on the differences between the sets?
Yeah, first of all, it was unbelievable that they crowdfunded the second movie, which is just a testament to the fans. That was unbelievable. I think they did it within like 48 hours or something. They raised that money, which was unbelievable. Because I don't think if they would have done that, we wouldn't be where we are even now, even with third film. I do think and I think we'll all echo this, more money, more problems. I think that when more money comes to the table, people think, oh, there's more luxuries. But the idea is just get bigger, get crazier. And as everyone knows, Terrifier is always trying to outdo the film before, which just means more blood, more kills, more. So, yeah, and then with different budgets are different costs. So we definitely had more money and definitely more cast and crew, which was amazing. We got to work with Christian Tinsley's studio, which was the best in the business at special effects prosthetics and make special effects makeup. I mean, they worked on so many phenomenal films. I mean, even TV shows. And I mean, he's just a titan in the industry. And to work with Heather and Ryan and Alana on my makeup was definitely a luxury. I was definitely well taken care of. And at the end of those long days, they were taking me in and out of makeup, and that was definitely different in luxury. And yeah, we had I can only really compare it, I think, from the first and the third film, because the second film I was only on for 2 to 4 days in isolated experiences. But if I was to compare, one was, like I said, a more innocent time, smaller, a lot less pressure. And then 3, it's a lot bigger, a lot more pressure, but we got to work with all departments and all these amazing creatives, like Olga Turka, who ran the arts department and the production design department, and all of her crew. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to love and a lot that was just made it a lot more challenging.
Absolutely. And I've heard in other interviews you said people shy away a little bit from asking questions about the scene in Terrifier 3, but
Which I just brought up. Just
right,
naturally.
but just, to say the least, your character has had some, strange moments on film. Birthing R's head at the end of 2, nasty bathtub, the glass scene, obviously, you talked about. How did you react when you read the script and you saw these things that your character had to do on screen?
I must have done something to piss Damien off or something. I seem to get all this stuff that are like when you say that out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty disgusting. But well, I will say that when I first read the first script, Damien says this, and when he said this, it kind of clicked for me. When you first read Art the Clown script, he doesn't really jump off the page, because once Damien and Dave do their thing, then on screen it's magnetic. But when you're reading a script, it just feels like pure violence for violence sake. It's just brutal just to get page to page. So that was my first experience reading it, not knowing anything about Damien, the genre, that it was a slasher. I was just like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? But then the second and third one, I must have been desensitized, dissociated, maybe just approaching it from a more rational lens. So I would just read it and go, okay, sounds good. I trust Damien, and I know that if it's in there, it's not unnecessary. Like it's a part of his vision, and which I totally trust and believe in.
Right.
I mean, at one point I remember, I don't think I've ever actually told anyone this, like on recording, but Dave, I remember, I don't know why I had it in my mind. I was like, oh, she's in a tub and she's in all black goo. She probably would be naked. The wardrobe would be falling off, or like disintegrated. And I was like, Damien, is that something? Damien's like, stop. He's like, that's not necessary. He's like, for the sake of Victoria Hayes and respecting that character, like, we don't need to do that. We don't need to go there. So I do, like, just even in those moments, just reiterates how much I trust and respect Damien. So if it's in the script, it's in the script for a reason, and I'm pretty much down. I'm down. I think the Shard of Glass scene, when I read that, he had written something like, "will be tastefully done." And we all laughed, like, yeah, how is it tastefully done? But he did. He tastefully. He did it. I think it could have been a lot worse.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Samantha, we're going to get to some deeper subjects now. I'm excited to hear your answers for these. You said in interviews you have accounts on social media, but it's like a job and hard to keep up with all of it. I agree 100%. It's full of toxic fans, as you would say. I want to ask your thoughts and opinion on a touchy subject matter that's attached to the Terrifier franchise and to Damien, unfortunately. He and his films are labeled misogynistic by a lot of people. I've seen, Lauren Lavera disavow this. What are your thoughts? You've worked with Damien, like you mentioned, for almost a decade now. How do those accusations make you feel?
Well, it's just absolutely not true. It's just like, he's just not. Like, I've known him for a decade, and he's been so loving, supportive, encouraging. I mean, he really, like, lifts everyone up. He gives us all really amazing opportunities. But, like, as an actor in his films, but also, like, he's also been someone that I've called up and said, hey, I'm writing the script. Do you mind reading it? And, like, he's just someone that really cares. He's just, so I can't say enough about Damien. I really it's just absolutely not true. I, like, get on an intellectual level why people would feel that way, because I think the first kill they were ever introduced to was Catherine Corcoran's Dawn Upside Down, and it's hard to enter into a franchise like that and not start to form your own opinions. But just to go back to what you're saying about how it makes me feel, it makes me sad. It like, when you know someone and you love someone and you know that they're a good person, to, like, hear those things being said about them in such a nasty but also sometimes aggressive way is just, like, really upsetting when that's not the person and that's not the experience that you have. And no matter what you say, it doesn't change those opinions. But that's also just par for the course. It's I hope by now, with all 3 films and seeing that character of Sienna, and even just all the really badass women that have come and gone in the franchise, that it's not, Art the Clown is just pretty brutal. And Damien is a massive horror fan, and he's just not a misogynist. So.
Yeah, and as brutal as that kill was, it made Art stick out. Like, I don't know if Terrifier is where it is without that kill. Like, people just know that kill. So, I mean,
Yeah.
It was brutal, but
Yeah, but I mean, now we know, like, it doesn't matter what gender or race or economic
Right.
status. Like, he's like COVID. He's like, let's anyone's a victim. You know what I mean? So David's Art the Clown is he kills for the joy of it. It doesn't matter. I mean, I only seen him kill a rat. Maybe there's an extent to which he won't kill animals. But no, that's a pretty insane kill. But then there's so many more that followed. That also there's the shower scene. Which
oh yeah,
dives
Oh,
into
yeah.
other territory. So
Absolutely. And here's another deep subject as well. I've seen in your other interviews, but specifically on your Instagram, that October is a special month to you, not only for Halloween, but more importantly, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And in your words, a cause very close to your heart. You spoke on fans meeting you at conventions and bravely telling you their stories. What would you like to tell anyone who may be going through a violent relationship or someone who has left one and is recovering from that?
So many things. I think the biggest thing for me that I've shared, because I'm very vocal about coming from a relationship that I was physically abused by my ex. A lot of what kept me in that relationship was shame. That I wasn't a victim. I didn't look like a very specific way that and I think that shame that was put on me kept me in the relationship. And I remember a lot of people asking questions that, would elicit a shame response, which was, why did you stay? Why did you let him do that to you? All these things. And I remember being like, well, why should I be ashamed of something that was done to me? I didn't, and that was the moment that it kind of clicked that was the thing that kept me from going and seeking help. And, just that you shouldn't be ashamed. Like, these things happen, and it happens a lot more often than you'd imagine that people want to think. And that in times, if you're in a relationship or coming out of it, you should always seek help when you can, whether it's a friend or a parent, no matter what their response might be. It might be anger, it might be, sadness, whatever it is, but seek that help, because no one should be navigating those relationships alone, or even an organization. Because those are things there's so many things that can keep you in a relationship: financial insecurity, emotional dependency, kids, and you really shouldn't have to navigate that alone, and you're not alone. So yeah, there's so much more.
Thank you so much for answering that question. Both of them, actually.
Thank
That
you
was
for
good.
asking.
That was great to hear. Okay, so Terrifier has been something that you've been doing personally for almost a decade now. I don't know what your future is for part 4, but can you reflect on almost a decade of portraying Vicky? I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing to us. We go to these conventions, see the lines of people to meet your team, and the fact that it's the highest earning unrated movie of all time. I mean, has it really resonated with you that it's something you're part of after doing these movies and forming these relationships with all these great people for, like I said, almost a decade now?
Not really. I mean, like, it's this thing where, like, I feel kind of shocked by it. There's always, like, little things that just, like, get bigger and bigger over time, little by little. Like, first we were just, our merch was sold at conventions. Now it's at Spirit, it's at Hot Topic, it's in the malls and the stores that I grew up, like, going to. And, and now it's, like, all over the world. We were doing premieres in Spain and in France, and it's just kind of mind-boggling. But it's kind of weird, because when you're going and doing all these things, it's hard. It never really hits. It's just kind of like you're just like looking around and feeling just as dumbfounded and like, how did we get here?
Right.
But yeah, like our lines recently at a convention was amazing. It was kind of amazing in one breath, because you're like, wow, this is how many people now have seen the film and really love it, which is like so validating for us as artists and filmmakers. But then in the other aspect, I can't like go and have a conversation with each individual for more than a certain amount of time, because there's just too many people in the line. So it's
Right.
It's definitely like a weird thing and hard to process. But I don't think anyone has really processed it. I think I keep texting Damien, like, collectively over a month will pass. I go, still has a hit. He's like, nope. Nope. But yeah.
Yeah, I follow him on Twitter X, and you can tell how much he really is kind of soaking it all in. Like, he's sharing every day how mind blown he is for the support. And we were just talking about conventions. I had the great privilege to meet you. I'm so glad you could make the rescheduled date at Spooky Empire. It was kind of a cluster. But we always like to ask, what's your favorite moment that you've been a part of at a convention? It can be an outrageous moment, bizarre, funny, surreal, sentimental. We've heard some great stories from like Kane Hodder. The women have kind of put us on blast that a lot of guys like the cop feels. Don't do that at conventions, guys.
Oh, no, yeah.
Don't do that.
Please don't. Well, that might have happened one or two times, but no, that wasn't my memory. Please don't do that. That's horrible. But I would say I'm gonna get sentimental again because it really traces back to. I'm kind of like in this space now where my mind's been blown by horror because like I have said this before where I didn't grow up with horror. There weren't films that I watched as a kid. My family wasn't into horror. So I was like ignorant to the genre. I was ignorant to really what it is. And over the course of 10 years, I feel like, or as long as I've been doing conventions, so a little bit less than that, but I've asked questions not out of judgment, but out of ignorance, being like, so what is it about horror? What the hell is it about these films that you like? And people have really shared with me all over the spectrum of, it's fun, it's entertaining, art's cute, he's funny. And then I've had, to answer your question, this one incident that really like struck me, that really like opened me up to the genre. And that was a woman in the UK who had shared with me that she had gotten out of a relationship where her husband had almost killed her. And she said that horror films are the things that taught her to fight back. And I feel like that's what I needed to hear, to just start to really open up and be like, oh, what are we doing here? Obviously she's watching, amazing leads like Lauren Lavera's Sienna, Neve Campbell in Scream. Like there's just a million final girls that I could name. But that started to, pique my curiosity. And then, I started to really investigate that question. And I think that moment opened me up, and now I've discovered a genre that I'm absolutely in love with, and that like I think I've been writing things over the years that I think were more horror-esque, and I just steered away from it because I don't know, for some reason I was like, oh no, it's not a horror film, and now I'm like, oh no, it is, and this is an amazing genre with amazing fans and an amazing potential, and I'm really grateful to that woman who expressed that, and since then I've had men, I've had women, I've had kids iterate a similar sentiment and even just share really personal things bravely, and
right.
And that's really, really touched me in a lot of ways. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you didn't grow up with horror, and you're only recently fallen in love with it as a whole, as a genre. So I've got a fun question for you. There's a trend going around online asking what your 4 favorite Letterboxd movies are. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Letterboxd, but in other words,
I am. I'm new to Letterboxd, but I am.
So I gotta ask. It doesn't have to be what you currently have them on there, but your favorite 4 movies. I know it's tough to put you on the spot.
Is it okay? So it's favorite 4 movies, but not necessarily
Across
like
the board.
on Letterboxd.
Yeah. So like my favorite 4.
Okay.
There's only one horror movie in there. So.
Oh, what are your favorite 4?
You asked me first. Okay.
I'm gonna steal your answers now.
The Godfather.
Amen. That's what actually.
Moonlight.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
The Banshees of Inisherin. And Godzilla -1.
Okay. Well, you have Godfather is one on my list. These are the movies I grew up with. So Godfather, My Cousin Vinny.
Yeah.
I think Godfather 1 and 2 are like the same. My Cousin Vinny, Goodfellas. What was the other one? There was Silence of the Lambs.
Okay. Yeah.
Is like really one of my. I just feel like that's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Oof. I think. Yeah, obviously a lot of them are New York Italian movies. But there's a movie, this Danish movie, The Hunt, with Mads Mikkelsen, that I just think is an
I
unbelievable
think I've seen
film.
that.
It's really hard to watch but really poignant and yeah, just the hunt. I don't know what the Danish title is. I think it's Danish or it's Swedish. Two different things, but I can't remember.
Yeah, The Hunt, 2012.
Yeah,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, with Mads Mikkelsen.
It's a solid top four.
That is
Oh,
great.
you know what's another good one? And I think this is David. The Vanishing, the original.
Oh, okay.
Have you guys
Nice.
seen The Vanishing?
Not
I
the
haven't.
original.
Oh my God. Yeah, not the American version. The original, and I want to say it's Danish again. That movie, that stuck with me. That was very real and very terrifying. So I would say that was another one that I was blown away by.
Yeah.
But I could keep listing, so.
Oh, that's awesome.
Well, like we said, Samantha, we won't take up much of your time. We want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been a fantastic, great pleasure. Is there anything you'd like to shout out or promote that you're working on currently? Where can the fans follow you, kind of keep up with you?
Yeah, I have a short film that's a psychological horror, ironically enough, that I put it into the festival circuit. So it premiered at Fright Fest and Nightmare and Scream Fest, and it's LA International Horror Fest. So that one is finishing its festival route, and I'll soon have information where on my one social media that I'm semi-active on is my Instagram, which is my first initial of my last name. So it's Scaffidi, and I usually, if there's any announcements, I put it on Instagram. I have a Twitter and I have a TikTok, but it's only as just a placeholder because a few random profiles have popped up that aren't mine.
Right.
So I'm not active on those, and I'm in and out on Instagram as well, as we mentioned earlier. I find it hard to focus when I'm constantly on a social media platform, but that would be the place, and there'll be an announcement hopefully soon in terms of that film. And yeah, just as a writer director and currently developing my feature length film, and one of them is a supernatural horror. So
Well, let us know. We'll be more than happy to promote it whenever you get that finished.
beautiful. Thank you guys for having me. This has been lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.